Megan Dudo here, candidate for the Williamson-Travis County's Municipal Utility District 1, or MUD for short. This is the second video I'm putting out there where I'll be talking more about the various issues I discussed in my campaign platform document. And that beast of a document can be viewed on my Facebook page, which I've linked to this video description. And it is a public page, so you should be able to view it even without a Facebook account. But if you're having difficulty, you can always reach out to me at votedudo@gmail.com. So in the first video, I talked about deed restrictions in our community. And today I would like to discuss one of my absolute favorite subjects in the world, parks. One of the responsibilities of our MUD is to manage our lovely park system. And within our district, we have 6 parks, as well as 8 stormwater detention facilities that have been improved to varying degrees to serve as additional park space, for a grand total of 27 acres of parkland. So as I did in my first video, I'd like to start out with my sort of minute-long elevator pitch on parks, in case you don't have time for the full discussion, because if you thought I could talk a long time about deed restrictions, you've never heard me talk about parks. So as we move into our future, one of our most important assets as a residential community is our park system. I will elaborate in the next part of this video on the many reasons I believe this to be true, but in summary, I believe our parks represent significant opportunities to build our community's wealth, enhance quality of life for all residents, contribute to the building of community, and protect and showcase our natural environment. In addition, research conducted by the National Recreation and Parks Association indicates that under the circumstances created by the COVID-19 pandemic, public park spaces remain as important as ever. Parks offer places to rejuvenate both our physical and mental health and help to reconnect us to our community at a time when we are feeling stressed and isolated. Parks belong to all of us. They are a representation of who we are as a community, and they reflect our collective identity and values. In addition, as we continue to seek ways to move forward in this post-pandemic world, parks can also offer opportunities for our local small business owners and organizations to continue to thrive. And I'll talk more about that later in the video. So in this video, I'd like to cover the following. First, just give you a more in-depth look at the value our park system brings to our community. Next, I want to provide an explanation of the park planning process that the district is gearing up for and why I feel that process is important. And then third, I just want to talk about why I think it's important to continue to plan for our parks even amidst a global pandemic. So to start, I'd like to expand on why parks are so valuable to our community, even if you yourself aren't a huge park user. And I'll start with the most practical and universal of reasons: money. It is well documented that properly maintained parks increase the property values of surrounding homes, and that having a park system that provides certain quality amenities increases the desirability of a neighborhood, which of course translates to higher values. And not only does this impact you as a property owner, helping you build equity in your home, but it also helps to create wealth in our community as a whole, because increases in property values lead to increased property tax revenue, which in turn allows the district to invest more in the maintenance of and appropriate improvements to our community. Nice things beget nice things. So even if you never step foot in one of our lovely parks, those parks are working for you. Number 2, community building. When you think of our parks, you may think of specific amenities or functions, like a playground for kids or a basketball court, or maybe just a quiet place to walk. But one of the most important things a park space can do for a community is to provide a gathering place for residents. And on its face, this one sounds kind of hippy-dippy, but it's actually quite a rich topic. I could devote an entire video discussion to this topic alone, but instead I'll just give you a few bits of supporting evidence to explain why I think this function is so critical for our community. In the fine year of 1989, a sociologist named Ray Oldenburg coined the term third place, which was a reference to the primary places people spend time. People's first places are their homes, their second places are their places of work, and their third places are those spaces where people can spend time with others on a spontaneous, voluntary, and informal basis. Some people have referred to these third places as the living rooms of our neighborhoods. Now, third places do not have to be publicly owned. In fact, some of the most important third places throughout human civilization have been in privately owned quasi-public spaces like pubs, barbershops, and cafes. So think of the show Cheers or of the coffee shop in the show Friends. But public parks and other community facilities can also serve as important third places, particularly in the suburbs, where we have much more of a disconnect between our commercial areas and our residential areas. So over here on London Lane, we can't just stroll down to the corner pub. So third places are crucial environments for building community for a variety of reasons. They provide a neutral ground where people who may otherwise not have opportunities to interact can come together and have casual interactions and conversations and ultimately build friendships. And as such, third places help foster empathy between people. They help combat isolation and loneliness, and they nurture trust and inclusion. Third places also have a robust capacity to build and enhance civic engagement. For example, taverns are well known to have played an important role in the American Revolution, hosting the Sons of Liberty as they plotted and planned. Raise a glass to freedom. The book Happy City, Transforming Our Lives Through Urban Design, which I am still in the process of reading, starts with a discussion about what the research says about human happiness. And one of the most crucial predictors of happiness is whether or not a person has meaningful human relationships in their life. The author goes on to discuss how crucial relationships are to civic engagement, and I just want to read an abbreviated excerpt from that book that I think is so interesting. The author says, people who live in monofunctional, car-dependent neighborhoods outside of urban centers are much less likely to know their neighbors. They are less likely to get involved with social groups and even less likely to participate in politics. This matters not only because political engagement is a civic duty and not just because it is one more contributor to well-being. It matters because cities need us to reach out to one another like never before. So over the last several years, as I've been involved in the Anderson Mill West Neighborhood Association and then with Friends of Anderson Mill West, one of the things we focused on was community events, which all took place in our public parks. And on the surface, it may be easy to dismiss those activities as superfluous, maybe as fun, but ultimately inconsequential. But I would argue that they were, in fact, fundamental to strengthening our community. Activities that bring our neighbors together are the foundation for civic engagement. And in 2019, when I asked residents a simple, open-ended question about their hopes and dreams for our community, one of the most common responses related to people's desire to get to know their neighbors better and to have increased opportunities to build relationships with their neighbors. So, at a time when our country is so divided, fostering togetherness is not only the balm that heals, it is also critical to empowering people to build a stronger and more democratic society. The next reason to love parks is that they support our physical and mental health. Parks offer free opportunities for people to meet their daily physical activity needs by providing destinations for play, for walking and biking, and also places for competitive sports. And with respect to this, I think it's important to point out the important role sports play in building human relationships. This is well documented among sociologists, and the research has found that the places where humans gather to play sports take on a certain sacredness within a community. And like the third places we discussed earlier, sports have been found to bolster relationships between people who may otherwise be at odds with one another. They play a crucial role in breaking down the barriers that might otherwise divide us. Socioeconomic status, religion, politics, none of that matters when you're on the soccer pitch. Sports quite literally level the playing field. And not only that, but sociologists have also found that people who participate in organized sports are also much more likely to participate in other civic projects. So if you want to read more about this, you can check out the book Palaces for the People, How Social Infrastructure Can Help Fight Inequality, Polarization, and the Decline of Civic Life. And then in addition to physical health, and for the reasons we've already discussed, parks have an important role to play in supporting our mental health. Green spaces also offer us the kind of mental respite we can only achieve by spending time outside, in the fresh air, amidst the trees, and under the sky. And this brings us right to our next reason to love parks. They are good for the natural environment. And what's good for the natural environment is good for us. Green spaces help cool our environment, leading to energy cost savings. They help reduce flooding by allowing for stormwater to infiltrate back into the ground. Vegetation helps clean our air and our water, and park spaces provide habitat for plants, animals, and insects, increasing biodiversity and creating opportunities for critters to pass safely through urban areas. Parks, big and small, give us immediate access to our natural world. And then lastly for today, parks offer something called direct use savings, which refers to the money park users save by being able to use the amenities and facilities available at a public park without having to pay a user fee for similar private facilities. So an obvious example of this for parents is the fact that taking our kids to the playground is free, whereas an indoor gym or bounce house or similar is very much not free. And so, once again, public parks are a great leveler, accessible to all. And in this time of COVID-19, when being outdoors is considered much safer than being indoors, parks also provide an opportunity to engage in activities that might not otherwise be available to us right now, or that might feel unsafe at this time. Okay, so what's the deal with this park plan you may have heard about? When I started volunteering with the Anderson-Mill West Neighborhood Association in early 2017, one of the first projects I championed was a 5-year park plan. And over the last couple of years, I have worked with the Parks Committee, which includes incumbent for the Mud Board, Jana Norton Ramirez, shout out, to prepare and revise a request for proposals so the district can solicit the help of a consultant to prepare the park plan. And last fall, the district board budgeted $20,000 to fund that planning process. And this summer, district staff distributed the request for proposals, and in the coming month, the district will finally be in a position to select a consultant and start the planning process. So why do I believe the district should prepare a park plan, and what will we all get for our $20,000 investment? So research has shown that in order for parks to live up to their potential, in other words, to provide all the benefits we talked about earlier in this video, they need to, at minimum, be well maintained and have a variety of amenities to meet the needs of different ages, capabilities, and interests. So a green space with nothing in it is not the same as a well-designed and maintained park. So our district has put a lot of love into our parks over the years. So we are in no way suffering when it comes to our park system. However, Making the most of our parks and public spaces is an ongoing practice, and maximizing the value of our parks means allowing these spaces and our use of them to evolve over time. So when I look at our parks, I still see immense opportunity, and I see a chance for our community to continue to build something beautiful together. Up until now, our community has had few opportunities to directly weigh in on park improvements, and I really want that to change because I want residents to take ownership of these spaces. From the beginning, I have fought for a process that actively involves the community, and the request for proposals that I helped draft reflects that focus. And I also think that a planning process like this will provide a good entryway into other forms of community engagement, because of all the things we can plan for in a community, one of the most joyful things to plan for is parks. Kids can get involved as well as adults of all ages. It is a creative process, an artistic process, and a process that allows us to focus on the very best of us. So, in addition to community engagement, the next reason to plan is government transparency. One of the important outcomes of planning processes is that they help maximize transparency in decision making, because the purpose of a plan is to provide a foundation and guide for policy and budgetary decisions. And for a plan to serve its true purpose, it needs to be accessible by not only elected officials, community staff, and other community leaders, but also by the public. And in that respect, the plan provides guidance to the public about what to expect from our leadership. Next, the park planning process will help our community identify and prioritize investments to maximize the benefits of our park system in line with our community values. One misconception about this park plan is that its purpose is to justify the construction of expensive capital improvements. But the point here is that improvements and amenities need not be expensive or elaborate in order to be of value to the community. On the contrary, some of the most special and elegant improvements cost hardly a thing. The true goal of the planning process should be to capture people's creativity and to identify the best ways to maximize our park system's potential in a combination of ways. In addition to improvements, this may also involve things like strategies to better market and program the spaces we have. It may include the targeted removal of improvements that are underused, so we're not wasting money maintaining things the community no longer values. And further, plans for improvements don't need to be implemented in one fell swoop. Improvements can be made incrementally over time, allowing for appropriate feedback loops to ensure the investment is a good one and to help us adjust course where needed. And then related to this is the issue of an aquatic amenity of some kind, like a pool. This community has for some time expressed hope that we could one day have some sort of aquatic amenity. And years ago, there was a petition to build a pool at Anderson Mill West Park. The district board had a study prepared that looked into that potential and ultimately decided against pursuing it for a number of reasons. But the desire to have some sort of water-related amenity has never completely died away because we live in Texas and it's hot. But there are options other than a swimming pool that have the potential to work within the space and financial constraints we have. And the value of a park planning process is that if that's something that's really important to the community, this is an opportunity to think about that within the context of our other community goals and explore creative ways to responsibly pursue something like that. And then lastly, another truly important reason to plan ahead is to encourage responsible spending with respect to our parks. So even though the district will be spending $20,000 up front to get the plan in place, I believe the return on that investment is going to be much more than that in the long term. And this would be generally achieved in the following ways. The plan will allow the community to identify what really matters in terms of future park improvements and to prioritize those things. So we're aligning our spending with our community's values and priorities and reducing wasteful spending. Next, the plan will include a 5-year implementation timeline, which will allow for more responsible, transparent, and longer-term budgeting. And it can also more easily facilitate smaller incremental investments towards longer-term goals, so the community has opportunities to test the success and value of projects over time. And then also the process allows for a greater exploration of different and creative ways to fund projects and initiatives, including through grants, community volunteerism, and potentially public-private partnerships. And it's also worth mentioning that in some cases, having a well-written plan in place can also unlock certain funding sources, such as grant programs that favor projects identified through community plans. So in many cases, having a plan signals to funders that a project is well thought out and will be a good investment. So the bottom line is, if you believe that our parks are an important piece of the fabric of our community, we owe it to ourselves to apply some focused thought on how to maximize their value to all of us. Given how much the global COVID-19 pandemic has altered our lives, it's reasonable to ask how and why we should still be undertaking a park planning process at this time. All of my experience and observations, as well as everything I've read on this subject, suggests that not only is it possible to plan for our parks during this time, but it is potentially even more critical than it was before COVID-19. Because not only have our outdoor amenities become even more important to our well-being and health during this time, but the fact that we need to adapt our use of these spaces suggests that now is the time to problem solve so that we can maximize our parks for the benefit of all. Instead of making new improvements to our parks at this time, this is actually the perfect moment to reflect on business as usual. As I see it, the question in front of us is, how do we shape our parks in light of this new world? We have data about what types of park uses are safe. You can go to the National Recreation and Park Association's website and see this information, along with guides on how to conduct phased reopenings of park facilities. So, based on this, I'll provide an example of what this might look like. Okay, so we know that even when COVID-19 has been at its worst, activities like walking and biking remain safe and are encouraged. And this is already a popular use of our park spaces. It was before COVID, and access to safe and comfortable and beautiful places to walk will be that much more important into the future. COVID or not, should the community confirm that this is a valuable goal, we have so many opportunities to improve our spaces just in this one regard. So, come if you will, down a path of walking and biking opportunity. We could focus on providing more shade to places like Anderson Mill Pond, which makes a lovely place to walk, but is frankly unbearable under a summer Texas sun. We could add lighting to places that are too dark or that feel unsafe when the sun starts to go down, like the backside of Anderson Mill West Park. We could continue to beautify walking routes with native plantings, not only creating a lovelier place to walk, but adding habitat for bees and butterflies. We could explore whether the community has interest in paving certain unpaved trail segments for the purposes of making them more accessible to all users, because a smooth paved surface can be easier to walk on for folks who aren't as sure-footed. Folks in wheelchairs, kids on scooters or small-wheeled bikes, and caretakers pushing strollers. We could make small adjustments to existing routes to make them extra fun for kids, like racetrack markings, signage, and stop-and-go lights. We could add more dog waste stations. We could look into adding water bottle fill-up stations. We could publish family scavenger hunts that encourage residents to travel the walking routes in each of our parks. We could make certain routes extra special by adding fairy lights, miniature gardens, public art, or other ornamental treasures. I've always thought that it would be magical to put fairy lights up under the tree canopy that overhangs the walking path in Anderson Mill West Park. So you see, just by thinking about this one single use of our parks, we can come up with a gazillion opportunities to make our community even more lovable and joyful. And some of these things also provide awesome opportunities for residents to work together on something beautiful. And you will note that many of these things can also be accomplished for a very small price tag or phased in slowly over time. So the other thing I want to say about this is that in post-pandemic times, our parks can provide special and unique opportunities for activities that traditionally occur indoors to be moved outdoors. And we are fortunate to live in a state where we can be outside most of the year. So let's work with our community's small business owners, organizational leaders, and schools to see how our park spaces can help them move through this challenging time. And so I'll give you a very specific example of what I mean by this. One of our neighbors owns a martial arts studio, and COVID-19 has been really hard on his business. And one of the ways he's tried to continue to hold classes for his students is to conduct them outside in public parks, along with reduced class sizes and social distancing. And he told me that Anderson Millwest Park Pavilion would be a perfect place to hold his classes, but our parks have all been closed, so he's had to use City of Austin parks instead. But he's our resident. In the early 20th century, open-air classes were used as a way to combat the spread of tuberculosis. And one of the things we know about COVID-19 is that the rate of transmission drops when we're outside. So what role can our parks play in providing a safer environment for some of the activities we would otherwise be stuck conducting indoors? Who can we partner with to make this happen? So this is our chance to problem solve, to make the best of a crummy situation. Human ingenuity, it's what we do. Our reality is what it is. We can't fix the pandemic, but we can continue to adapt and thrive in spite of it. And this planning process is just one more way we can work together and remember that we're still part of a community. We're still in this together, and we can still look to the future. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it there for now, but as always, please reach out with questions, comments, and thoughts. I love to talk about parks. I could talk about parks all day, so let me know. Until next time, bye.